What's up, YouTube? How we looking? Coach Max here, back with another video. So the current rebuild I'm working on got just a bit too problematic, and there wasn't any way that I was going to be able to get it edited in time, even if I pulled an all-nighter. I'm still very much a rookie at this whole YouTube thing, so I'm kind of still figuring out how to do stuff and what my routine is going to be. Plus, going back over the video, I wasn't really liking how it was turning out, so I may just redo it entirely. Now, despite that, I didn't want to wimp out on uploading this week. You don't get better if you don't practice, after all, so I decided to try something different this time around and just talk. After all, I stated in my channel bio that I'm looking to be a new/old voice in the 2K community, and how am I going to have a voice if I never really say anything? My platform may be minuscule at the moment, but it is still a platform, and I might as well use it. So, yeah. This is a new segment that, for now, I'm calling The Coach's Chair. And today on The Coach's Chair, I want to talk about one of my favorite modes, MyGM. So just sit back and relax, or whatever you like to do when you have a podcast or video in the background. And if you like what I have to say or how I say it, let me know in the comments or by hitting that like button. Anyway, if you've watched my earliest videos and haven't subscribed yet, and by the way, I definitely recommend subscribing because I would love to have you on the team, one of the things I wanted to do with this channel was a playthrough of the MyGM story. In fact, the first time I seriously thought of starting a YouTube channel was when a MyGM story was first announced in NBA 2K18. Due to several circumstances, some beyond my control, some not, I wasn't able to put planning into practice for NBA 2K18. As for 2K19, well, at least I got 2 videos in before I decided to scrap it after losing momentum. Since then, I have had an opportunity to play through the MyGM story a couple of times, as well as watch several videos of others playing through it. And my thoughts on the MyGM story this year, as well as the MyGM story as a whole, can basically be summed up as a couple of steps forward and a couple of steps back. It's not quite activity without accomplishment, but it's also not quite a big win. Now, considering MyGM in my league tends to not get a whole lot of love, it made me wonder if there will be a story to MyGM in 2K20, or if there should be. Starting with some of the good, I do like the actual story being told this time around. 2K18's The Next Chapter was nice, but kind of felt like it was just a bit of extra fluff on the already existing MyGM mode. By that, I mean you could take it out and not really lose anything except maybe badly written cutscenes that play up all of the caricature, and one controversial in-season trade that we're not going to talk about here. This time around, there's a pretty clear difference between the Saga Continues and regular MyGM. Sure, it kind of plays the same as regular MyGM outside of the story bits, kind of like how my career is the same past the prelude, but now the story mode is a distinct entity that is a little better at standing on its own than the next chapter was. Part of that, I think, can be attributed to one character. That statement alone is pretty surprising, but probably not as surprising as the character I'm talking about. Probably the most stereotypical out of all of them, Tex Towers. Now I know what you're probably thinking. But Coach, Tex was corny! But Coach, those sayings were stupid! But Coach, Tex is a stereotype meant to be an offensive representation of Look, I don't disagree with any of that. Other than the offensive stereotype thing, I'm pretty sure 2K wasn't intentionally going that route, but yes, Tex was a total cornball. I like the sayings personally, but I know they're not everyone's cup of tea. And you know what? For me, it works. Wanna know why? Because when you get past the sayings and the funny hat and all of the Texas, you discover that there's some T-bone steak under that 10-gallon hat of Tex Towers. It's as simple as this. When you break Tex down into his most basic level, there are essentially 2 core aspects to his personality. While these 2 core aspects can be explained in excruciating detail, they can be effectively summed up in one word each. Texas, businessman. Now, it doesn't seem like much just having 2 core aspects of your personality, but sometimes when it's done well, 2 aspects can convey a lot. But for 2K specifically, it really works for one reason. Almost every other character only has one personality, and that personality is turned up to the point of caricature and never turned off. Now, that isn't to say that one-note personalities aren't realistic. I personally know plenty of people who talk and act like some of the characters 2K has put out, even B-Fresh. It's just that those personalities only really work if you like whatever the gimmick du jour is, and they'll almost never be fleshed out three-dimensional characters because they'll only have two, their normal perspective and the part that's affected by you. A player character, silent or otherwise, will always have extra depth due to player input. Everyone else, it's up to the writers. And as I mentioned before, I don't think too highly of 2K's writing, at least as much as the MyGM side of things is concerned. It tends to be, at best, kind of bland, boring, or banal, and at worst, be fresh. Now, I think Tex was a step forward in a mode where the other personalities, or rather their lack of, were just trying not to drown. I found myself engaged with my interactions with him, but not quite enough to get around one of the bigger steps back with the story, one that I think plenty of people can agree with. There's so much talking. You know how I said that in the next chapter, the story felt a bit like a cheap add-on to the MyGM gameplay? Well, at times, I felt like the Saga Continues was cutscene after cutscene after cutscene, with a short gameplay segment thrown in. Now take a look at my two MyGM videos, both of them clocking just over 17 minutes each. The second of the two videos ends just before the first gameplay segment. Now, to be fair, since I was acting out the cutscenes, I was going through the story slower than the average player who just reads them would. But the total amount of time in both videos that I spent just editorializing or otherwise not progressing the story, just about 7 minutes total. That means that if you're going through the story at a moderate speed, that is probably 15, 20, or even 25 minutes of dialogue boxes and choices you have to go through before you can actually play some basketball. Now, if the story was well written, well presented, engaging, or some other positive adjective, that wouldn't be a problem. Getting absorbed in something is almost always a sign that said something is good. But when I say 15, 20, or even 25 minutes of dialogue boxes and choices, I am being literal about that. That is all the presentation is. Dialogue box with the same recycled talking animations from different angles until you get to pick up a ball for a few minutes again. What this tends to get people absorbed in is button mashing their way through the dialogue until they can actually play, and was part of why the ability to skip cutscenes in my career was met with overwhelming praise. There's at least one point in the story where this is extremely egregious, where your character performs an action, or rather, there's a bracket in the dialogue box that says what your character does, but on screen it's the same animation. 2K writers, programmers, Eric Benish, whoever made this call. You mean to tell me that in 2018, when this game came out, with close to 20 years and 20 installments of this game alone, and who knows how many advancements and innovations in video game storytelling that have come about in this series alone, never mind in general, a bracket in a dialogue box, something you can do in a chat room or an instant messenger program, that was the best you could come up with to explain that someone picked up a phone or turned on a TV. In the words of the late Don Haskins, "Are you kidding me?" Now, I could continue to elaborate, but I think these two things kind of hit all the high points that explain the overall problem with the MyGM story, and I think NBA 2K as a whole, at least for the last 2 or 3 years. That being that 2K is really good at delivering hype, but not quite as good at delivering on the hype. It builds itself up, it builds you up, it gets you ready to get out there and run the rock, and when you finally do, you end up tripping over cracks and stepping in potholes. It's like playing on the bad court, you know, the one that's uneven, has no nets, you probably have to sweep up twigs and dead leaves and mud, and you hope you don't lose a long rebound into the street or a puddle or something. You don't actually want to play there, except maybe when you want to shoot around by yourself, but it's better than not having a court to play on at all, so you deal with it. And really, the MyGM story is not all that bad. It's definitely taken some strides this year to make you feel more like a GM, and some of the decisions you make actually matter, at least a little bit. You also get to build a team from the ground up, which was what I was hoping you'd have gotten to do from the beginning in 2K18. There's a coherent story that I can get into under everything, it's just presented poorly and plagued with minor pitfalls that leave it feeling unpolished and incomplete. So, given everything I've said on this, what does the future have in store? Will the MyGM saga continue? Should it continue? Well, I for one hope it does, because I do love a good story, and I think the story has given MyGM a facelift, so it's not just a harder, less customizable My League with trite writing. My main worry is that while it will continue, it'll just be more of the same, because the resources for MyGM and My League are whatever is left after My Team, My Career, and Park and Pro-Am have wrung out the bar rag. That being said, I don't think the wheel needs to be reinvented here, maybe redesigned a little, but not completely changed up. While I wouldn't know the nuts and bolts of how to go about that because I assume there are some limitations with MyGM that make it impossible to present it like My Career, I think the best two steps to take are to tighten up the writing and to find that balance between gameplay and story, where the story builds up the gameplay and the gameplay helps tell the story. A lot more of show, not tell in this case. In the end, I guess I'm part of the minority that actually cares about story and narrative, even in a sports title. And while MyGM may be the proverbial bad court among the modes that make up NBA 2K, it's a bad court that I'm okay playing on. But if the court can be fixed up, whether it be by me or someone with a better idea of how to do it, that's not a bad thing, right? That's all I have to say for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care, y'all.